for the past several years, I've been working on our mobility solutions, building all sorts of applications, strategies, helping our clients build applications for themselves and their workers and employees. And today, I'm here with my colleague Phil Redman. He'll be joining us on stage shortly. And we're going to be talking about the next generation of mobile applications, particularly powered by Android and Google Cloud. So with that, just to kind of describe a little bit about what we're seeing, where we are. Apps, as we look at them, I mean, they're not new. We've been doing mobile apps for a long time, right? Probably since the late 90s really is when we've been building different types of mobile applications. But over the years, we've seen that the types of applications we build and the interactions and the integrations that we have, all of these things are changing. And with the next generation of apps, we're starting to see new technologies that are being introduced that allow us to do even more powerful things with enterprise mobility. So we're seeing a focus more on end-to-end solutions. It's not just about the front end or the back end or any one component, but we have to look at it from all of those things, plus cloud, plus security. Right? We really have to look at these as end-to-end solutions. We're seeing that a lot of new innovation is being driven because of the advances in technology, right? So for the past several years, I would say, honestly, we hadn't really been innovating in the space of mobile apps. We had been taking things from desktop and paper and then putting them on mobile devices, but we hadn't really been doing new things with those mobile applications. And so we'll talk a lot more about that. And then in order to support that, there are a lot of things that need to happen on the back-end side to support those new applications. And in many cases, we don't have access to data today that we need to have access to, or perhaps the back-end systems just aren't able to support what we need to do. And so we have a number of new types of back-end architectures and platform capabilities that really enable us to do things in that space. So here's the agenda real quick. We're going to talk about the evolution of mobile apps, where we were, where we're going, look into the next generation of mobile apps, and then talk about how we're really transforming those apps in the enterprise, and then some of our recommendations for how to build next generation applications. So if we look at the overall timeline of mobile applications, right? Like I said, I mean, this chart goes to 2005, but in reality, like I said, we've been doing this since the late 90s, right? I mean, you might remember, maybe some of you might remember, BlackBerries and Windows mobile devices and Windows CE devices and those types of applications. And so, we look at that time as what we call Enterprise Mobility 1.0. And it was all about more just how do I get email on my devices? How do I get calendar? How do I do text messaging, right? Very simple types of applications that we were doing. And then, we started to shift more towards Enterprise Mobility 2.0, which is where we really started to take a more mobile-first approach, right? So, like I said, it wasn't about taking desktop applications and putting them on mobile, but now we're really looking at what are those use cases that really apply to mobile devices to allow us to take advantage of what's happening on those mobile devices. And so, and then we started to move towards Enterprise Mobility 3.0, which is where we are today, but we're shifting into Enterprise Mobility 4.0 as well, or the next generation, really. And Enterprise Mobility 3.0 is more about transforming how we're doing work today, right? It's about introducing new types of technologies that, not, like I said, it's not about now going to paper or going from paper to the phone, but it's about how do we really change the way our workers do their jobs, right? And so we'll show you some examples of how we're doing that. Oh, sorry. What I'll also say is, you can see here that the types of applications that we were building have evolved over time as well. So we've had mobile websites, native apps, web apps, hybrid apps, right? All of this has changed. We still continue to use these types of applications, but we continue to see newer and newer types of applications evolve. And then the way we interact with the data, with our devices, that's also changing, right? So, it used to be way back when we had a stylus and we had to tap on our device and our app. Then we started to be able to use our finger. Then it's we introduced gestures, so the device could see your eyes moving on the screen, right? And then, taking advantage of some of the context-aware capabilities so that the device knew where we were, it knew a little bit more about the situation, the present situation, and perhaps even the past situation to provide new ways to interact with us. We're doing a lot more with voice now, right? So with the emergence of voice assistants and voice capabilities, we're seeing a lot of voice to text and text to voice to allow us to interact a little bit differently. And then, of course, artificial intelligence, which we'll talk about a little bit here as well. So, while there's all these advancements in these technologies, enterprises are actually quite slow to adopt these, right? And if you think about ourselves in our own everyday use of our own devices, the average consumer has about 30 applications on their phones, right? But if you look at the enterprise side, the average is about 8, right? But it's growing and it's changing, and we'll take a look at some of the challenges that are behind that. But the types of applications that enterprises do use and do buy, right? We consider off-the-shelf or packaged applications that might require some level of customization or some level of personalization to be able to use them. And then on the other side, we have total custom applications, right? So these are apps that have been built from scratch. And so you've designed the whole experience, you've built everything, perhaps using design-led thinking or new approaches to designing applications, but they are very custom. But when you put that together, you can see that about 70% of the applications that we're building have some sort of development required in order to actually use them, right? But going to some of the challenges of why it's difficult, we'll talk about some of these here, right? So if you look at the platform challenges, we have, even if you just look at Android itself, as I'm sure you all know, Android's got many different versions, right? And different features work on different versions, and so we have to account for those. And then you start to introduce other platforms. Maybe you're also supporting iOS, or maybe you've got mobile web. And then you really need to start to understand, what can I do on each of those different platforms? How do I manage that? And how do I account for that? That ultimately then means that you have higher development costs and operating costs, because as you may know, for each of the different types of applications you have to build, that just requires more development work to make it happen. Enterprises usually have limited resources and knowledge. They don't necessarily have the expertise in security, or perhaps they don't have the right designers, or perhaps they don't have the experts in the backend integration or security, or even the right front-end developers to be able to build some of the applications. And sometimes business cases are hard to prove out for many companies, right? And they can't always demonstrate the value that they're getting from the mobile applications, and then when you compare that to the cost, sometimes the cost just outweighs the perceived value. And the last one there, the constant kind of tension between business and IT. Oftentimes businesses look to IT and the IT groups can't support them as quickly as the businesses might want. Or perhaps the IT groups are looking at the businesses and saying, what you're trying to do is really not reasonable, or it's just not possible, or maybe it's going to take a little bit of time because we have to put some things in place in order to support that, right? So there is this kind of challenge. But let's talk about the next generation of applications. And as I mentioned, this journey from mobility 1.0 to 3.0. And I think Google Maps is a great example of that, and it's something we can all relate to, right? So if we think back to the early days of Google Maps, right, all you could do was get directions, right? You had to put in an address and it would give you directions. And at one point you actually had to print out a list of the directions because it wasn't actually navigating you there. So then in Mobility 2.0, we started to see things like navigation and traffic introduced, right? And we could plug in multiple points, so it could actually suggest the right routes and ways to go, right? And things like that. So we started to get a little bit more advanced. And with Mobility 3.0, now we're really using maps in a very different way. It's not just about getting directions or figuring out how to get somewhere, but it's about exploring places, right? Now when you look up something, you go to Maps and you search, you'll take a look at what, you have reviews, you've got other location information, perhaps you've got hours of business, right? I mean, there's just a lot more information there. You're able to share. Now Maps is integrated with more things. So even Google Assistant is integrated with Maps, so it knows what your habits are. It knows which location is home or work, and it can suggest, hey, you have an appointment at this time, you should leave at this time in order to get there in time, right? So it's just really changed the way we're using Maps. It's not just about directions anymore. So hopefully you can see how over time the applications and the technology have allowed us to build more exciting applications. So, on the consumer side, right, that's a consumer application, but the enterprise expectations are continuing to increase because of these really cool consumer applications that are out there. So some of these, for example, mobile business models, right? I mean, the Uber models, or the micropayments or mobile advertising. These are all capabilities that businesses can take advantage of and include in their enterprise solutions as well. We expect these really personalized experiences, right? Just like how we get in the consumer apps, we want those things for our work applications too. We want to be able to use social media types of applications and be able to share and collaborate with other people that we work with. Contextual awareness. Our application should know that perhaps I did a particular function on my desktop and now I'm picking it up on my phone or my tablet or on a different device, and taking all that information into account. The payment capabilities, and then the natural and intuitive interfaces. This is something I think enterprises typically didn't really focus on this in the past. It was really just, hey, it's for our employees, right? They just need something that works. And they didn't really focus on that user experience. And then they found that their employees weren't happy with the applications. It just, they were complaining about it. I was recently at a pretty major store, and they had rolled out a new mobile application to all their, the cashiers and store workers, and all the people, like all their employees, were complaining about this app to me, right, as a customer. They're like, I can't use this app, it's terrible. We can't do like what we used to do on the other one, or I can't figure out and they were just complaining. And that just really shows the importance of having these really good interfaces and designs with our enterprise applications as well. So the nice thing is that we've got these really great technologies now that are allowing us to provide these better experiences, right? So voice assistants, we've got Google Assistant, we've got Google Home, we've got Dialogflow to allow us to create conversations and provide a more conversational type of experience. Immersive applications are augmented reality and virtual reality. So we're able to use AR Core and Daydream, and the SDKs and all that they provide, so that we can again provide these really exciting experiences through AR and VR. IoT applications, of course, being able to use sensors, all around us that we can communicate with and provide additional information or additional capabilities that we didn't have before. We mentioned the context-aware machine learning and AI. I think this is one of the most exciting places, and Feifei was talking about that as well. But we're now building in capabilities such as natural language processing, image recognition, right, prediction, all of these capabilities to allow us to make our apps smarter. And then instant apps, which Phil will show us a demo about, but it's really being able to take action at that point of desire, rather than having to, to go and download applications and find out where in the application you need to go. But these are just instant functions that we can do right away. So a lot of advancements on the device itself, right? If you think about the smartphones that you all have, just look year after year, all the changes that you see, right, in terms of device processing time, where now we've got multi-core processors that can be to 2.5 times faster than single-core processors, right? That allows us to do the AR and the VR and the machine learning on the devices, especially the edge analytics type of work that we can do as well. The screens and the cameras, every year there's this kind of competition to see who has the better camera, right? And it's always, about us taking selfies and pictures, but the cameras and the screen resolution really allow us to get much more accurate and precise with things like image recognition or AR, VR, right? And so it allows us to do a lot more with that information. The sensors we talked about, as well, fingerprint sensors, accelerometers, ambient light sensors, right, and so on. And then wearables as well, right? We have a wide variety of whether it's watches or glasses or any other number of wearable devices that allow us to have a much better experience. And so as you look at all of these, right, the nice thing with Android is that you have a variety of devices and form factors and price points, right? So enterprises can pick the right device that meets their needs and matches what they're trying to do. All right, so some examples of some of the technologies that are providing these experiences. We've already talked a bit about context aware and how our applications can adapt to our environment or to our situation or to whatever it might be. The AI-powered applications, right, again, our applications are getting smarter. They're learning more about all sorts of things, right? They're taking advantage of a lot of data that we hadn't had before, getting into recommendations, into personalization, and so on. Self-learning applications, so this is about the app learning itself and how it can take different actions based on what it's experiencing and what it's been learning over time. And edge analytics, this is the ability to, you may be familiar with TensorFlow and Cloud ML and these kinds of image recognition capabilities that we've been doing for a few years, right? But that's in the cloud, and now we can actually do these things with TensorFlow Lite and some of the neural networks APIs and things like that. We can do it right on the device. We don't even need to go to the cloud, and so that allows us to do things in more real time and just get a much better experience in that way, which is really exciting. IoT based applications, right? I mean, we're seeing lots of examples of those. You can see those in healthcare, you can see those in retail, you can see those in manufacturing, and so on, where we're really trying to take advantage of the sensors and the other machines that are around us to provide a better experience. Immersive applications, voice assisted, templatized. Templatized applications, we list this here, but I haven't really seen a lot of success with those. That's really where third-party providers might provide a template type of an application which you would build off of and perhaps customize a lot more than normal. But many have tried it, but it's just not as successful from some of what I've personally seen. Okay, so now I'm going to transition it over to Phil. And Phil will come and first do our first demo with our voice-based digital assistant. Phil?
Great. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Nisha. I'm Phil Redmond. I'm part of our digital transformation team. And so I work with clients globally to help them around mobility, security, big data and analytics, AI and machine learning, and of course, mobile technologies. And so we're working with clients to help transform what they're doing. And here's an example of one that I'll show you, is with an organization called West Midlands Police. They're the second largest police force in the UK, so over 10,000 police officers, just a bit smaller than the London Police Force, the London Metro. And they're really looking at how to modernize the police force going forward and using mobile devices, specifically Android mobile devices. And so we worked with them to get an understanding of how we can accommodate police officers as they're going towards different incidences and how to support them when they get to those instances. So we're going to show you an example of what that looks like. And we've created what we call, part of a digital virtual mobile assistant. Now, as you might be familiar with virtual assistants, and there's lots of varieties here, but it's an idea of more of a voice-based interaction for the police officers. Obviously, in many cases, police officers will be in their cars. They may be by themselves. They may not have, hands to be able to navigate information. At the same time, they want to find out information when they're on the move. They don't have a lot of time once they get to what they call an incident, right, to find out that information. So we work together with them in order to understand how they can be better supported by having information at their hands and understanding what's going on as they arrive, and then improve some of the processes that they have once they arrive too, all by using a digital virtual assistant. So just like we may use a digital virtual assistant like Google Assistant or Siri in order to help us, with our tasks for taking messages or making phone calls or doing searches, they're looking to see how they can use voice-based digital assistants also in their work. So I'm going to switch over to the Chromecast now. We put it up on the screen. Can you see the Chromecast? Is it casting? I'll try, make sure. I thought. must have canceled out there. There we go. So as you can see, when we worked with them, we didn't want to give them a typical kind of Android app that may be part of the material design features that they might be used to. We wanted to give them something that was very type of voice-oriented. So you can see there's no soft keys that we have here for navigation. They can completely navigate by voice. Now, we did give them an opportunity by using the sliding menu to be also navigating, but we didn't give them any buttons on the side here in order to navigate. And so they're easily able to hear information. As you can see here, this is an incident that they might be seeing, right? These are, of course, made-up incidences. But these are incidences they might be seeing. And so simply by pushing on them, they can hear the information. Now, when they get a report, they may not just get one report. They may get additional information as they're going. So you can see here, there's all different types of information that might be coming on by simply just pushing on this. I don't think you could hear it. Let me click on the Do Not Disturb. That might be the reason why. Can you hear it? I can't hear if I hear anything.
Gather witness statement.
Oh,
Location HA01 at Wembley, London minus. Case number minus 128,781. Spout area for CCTV footage. Location SW139 Pi Hounslow, London minus.
So you can see as additional information keeps coming out, they can hear all the updates, right? So that's one thing to do. They could also navigate the application. So if they wanted to make a phone call, just like with a regular assistant, they can push our little button here. Go to Blue Cape pages.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Go to Blue Pages.
Okay, showing the blue pages.
So they can either go to their directory that they have here, they can call up someone's name, they can say call or message, etc. The other thing we wanted to do was give them an advanced capability for taking witness statements. So today they take all their witness statements in the analog way with basically a pencil and paper, right? And so those may not be accurate. Now we can start a new witness statement here. Start a new witness statement.
Okay, here's a new witness statement.
And by simply on pushing the icon, they can start retrieving the information from the witness, and it takes the notes right for them in the statement, which they can go and, let's see here, which they can go and then, oh, it will show up, there we go. Maybe a little noisy in here, but they can take the notes right on the witness statement and then go and edit them later. All right, oh, there we go. So you can see that comes up. We can also integrate this into Google Translate. And so if there's another language that someone's speaking, it can then translate it onto English right there. Now today, they still need to actually print out the witness statements and get them signed, so they can't use this for court, but it gives them an accurate way of collecting the data, much more accurate than it was with pencil and paper. So some pretty cool stuff using a digital virtual assistant, for the police force. All right, can we switch back to the presentation now, please? So, as you know, there are some standard ways that we've been developing mobile apps for many, many years. And we get asked this quite a bit, what's the best way from our clients, what's the best way that we should develop our mobile apps? What technology, what platform should we be using? And a lot of it goes into, who's the app being used for? Is it for the customer? Is it for their employees? Is it with a partner? What platforms are they using? Are they single? Are there multiple platforms? In many cases, the majority of applications, especially for customers, we develop still in the native format. Right? And so most applications today are still using the native capabilities, whether the Android SDK, right, or for Apple. Right? It gives them the richest type of interface that they can have, high levels of security. Right? It's something that everybody wants to do today, typically for their customers. And when you have a large number of users that will be using that app, it makes a lot of sense. But for internal users, it may not make as much sense because you have a smaller internal employee force to develop that app, and there actually may be, and what we see in most cases, multiple platforms that are supported within the enterprise space. So they may support both Android and Apple capabilities. And so they're looking at building more of a native app, a hybrid app that has kind of the best of both worlds for native and web, a single development platform to support the applications that they have. Obviously there, an advantage is the operating pieces on that. The testing, the development, and then the operating costs are much lower because you don't have to support individual applications and individual platforms. And so we're seeing an increased demand from our customer base to support more of these hybrid apps, and that's across a number of different hybrid development technologies. Mobile web is an early way of people for developing apps, web-based apps, but they have been very responsive. And so obviously you need a good connection, you don't have a offline capability. They are OS agnostic, but the interface and the usability of those typically are a lot lower. And so we don't really build a lot of mobile web apps, they're just not really demanded, right? But we think that there are opportunities for this to change in the future with kind of more of the next generation of mobile apps that we're going to focus on, including, I want to get this thing to work, progressive web apps, micro apps, and instant apps. Does anyone here have any experience with progressive web apps at all? Raise your hand. Just one person, right? So, been around for a little bit, introduced not too long ago, but been around for a bit, where you could take the benefits of native and increase capability for mobile web apps, right? So these are web apps. You can put, they're instantly shareable, they're linkable, you can send someone a link, you don't need to download these from an app store, and they have a functionality that's improved performance overall for mobile users, okay? And so we see certainly, I'm playing around with some of these different capabilities, only supported on Android today, not supported on iOS, but we think that these could be some interesting ways of improving some of that experience for mobile web apps, and it gives a much lower cost for development and lower operating costs overall. Micro apps are another way that we think that are expanding. So micro apps are highly targeted apps, very application-specific apps, very simple to use. They may live and sit right on the desktop. They have a very limited amount of functionality. An example of a micro app may be something like weather, for instance, or you could see in the future where maybe Uber would put out a micro app where all you do is just push the button, right, and in 5 minutes your car shows up. Right, so think about that, like, if you're familiar with kind of the Amazon buttons where you just push it and, your case of water shows up, a day or two later. The same thing for mobility. Just push the button and you get the information. So very, very low cost to develop, very low cost to use. I mean, even today we've seen that apps and native apps have grown in complexity where they have so many windows and screens and clicks in order to get the information. And mobility is all about the here and the now. It's about how to do that much quicker and easier. And you can't get quicker and easier than a micro app, which can deliver the information or the service, ASAP. And then finally, we're going to show you and talk a little bit about these instant apps. Is anyone familiar with instant apps introduced a few years ago? Well, not too many people here. So an instant app are app functions, and they're launched without downloading an app, right? So it's a web-based app. Now, they're built in native capabilities, right? But they can leverage those native capabilities, but make it much easier to develop and much quicker. And I'll show you some examples of what we mean by that, right? They are fairly limited, but they're very, very easy to use and to deploy. So they're great if you're only using the app on a one-time basis or for a short-term temporary basis. So today, even for things like these conferences, we may download the conference app and we use it for the week, but do we really need to have it sit on our device? Right? How many people here have downloaded apps that they've used only temporarily or for a one-time use and then deleted it off their device? With instant apps, you won't have to do that anymore. Right? Again, only available for Android platforms. So I'm going to show you kind of what that means. If we go back to the Chromecasts, this is a native app that we developed for a client for a package delivery service last year. This is a full native app that lives on the device. And a package delivery service, you have people that are scanning packages in, putting them on trucks, and then you have people that are delivering the packages. Now, sometimes that's the same person, but oftentimes it's a different person. So the driver who's driving and delivering those packages would get this app, but they might not do any scanning. And so when you log into this app, right, you can see here there's an ability that they could just click on here and they can scan packages in, right? So if we have my little barcode reader here, it reads the barcode, it scans the package, you get the information in. But this is a full native app, including turn-by-turn directions and instructions that we have, built on Google and Android platform, right? Completely out of Google Firebase on the back end. On the front end, we have Google Maps in here, we have image recognition, all different types of capabilities for this. But for a person who's just scanning it, do they really need to have this full type of application? So I have another device here. Let's see here. I'm going to bring this one up. And this is going to show you an instant app that we developed that kind of does the same thing. All right? And so let's say the package scanner comes into work, we can send them an email. So just through this email right here, you can see they get a link, right? No downloading anything from an app store, no pushing anything out. Simply click on the link, and an instant app will open right up, right? They can just log in with their credentials, and then, boom, start scanning in seconds, right? The same type of idea. Very, very low cost to develop, very easy to do, and then boom, when they're done, they just click out of the app, and then they're done. They can save the link for the future, whatever that is, and so we can send them a link every morning. They can put it in their calendar. So very easy to use. So you can imagine a plethora of different ideas of how you can use these Android instant apps for potential temporary use or for short-term use or for people who don't need a full app capabilities. So not a lot of this being used in the marketplace yet, but we see a whole lot of interest, and we think a whole lot of capabilities to come out with this. All right, we can go back to the presentation now, please. So those are two examples of us working with clients and developing and using some of these new generation technologies. The first one using capabilities like machine learning and AI. So with the natural voice recognition, you can see how easily that worked, even within the conference halls here when it's noisy. Natural language speech, all those types of things that we can use using the Google technologies. Right? So capabilities they're simplifying in many ways, but they're offering more capabilities. So with these micro apps, right, some examples here, simply maybe ordering something off a menu, approving a vacation request, approving a T&E, different micro flows. So integration now into enterprise application platforms like Salesforce.com or Workday and ServiceNow. So capabilities of supporting that, not just a web-based capability, but integrated into really robust information. And then microservices. So as we all know, microservices are growing in demand to incorporate more support and capabilities across these different types of devices. So what does this take in order to support a lot of these next-gen app capabilities? You've heard about some stuff on the front end, right? So we have hardware, software, network capabilities that have evolved to support a much richer capability for these mobile apps. So the bottom line is we feel with our clients, there's no excuses anymore, right? There's nothing holding us back. Even costs have come down, costs of hardware, for services, for cloud capabilities, right? There's really very few barriers to do almost anything out there today, except for there's an issue of backend, right? What we run into all the time is backend complexity. So depending on the industry, they could be a regulated industry, they could be an industry that's been around for a long time. They don't have APIs that are developed, and they don't have an easy way of accessing their corporate data. Right? If we could just erase everything from our clients and start over, the world would be much simpler, but it'd be a very, very expensive place to go. And so how do we access that data for them to put it onto these kind of front-end capabilities that we're talking about? So we're not only thinking about that front-end development, but also the back-end, and there's lots of cool stuff that's happening on the back-end to make this all work. So we're going from kind of monolithic structures, which have been easy to deploy, scalability issues, but difficult to add features, right, to much more scalable, right, with client-server capabilities, and now into more microservices. And so a microservice is a platform, right, and an architecture, a software architecture that can easily integrate into business services, and it can break down the different application needs into these different services that you can easily build once and then use across all different types of mobile platforms. So you can eliminate a single point of failure because if one, let's say, business service goes down, there's still other services that would be available. There isn't one level of integration. They're very, very scalable, and most importantly, they're reusable, right? So we could build stuff for some clients, and then we can reuse those microservices across different clients. Very easy, very fast, very, very low cost to build these services. They're very, very rich, too, so they can support complex orchestration across different data stores, across different platforms, across different types of mobile devices, across different data types. So very, very, very complex stuff that's built down and integrated very easily. And they use this business logic layer as a service. It's a new digital orchestration layer that we think that's really important, that's evolved in part of the mobile backend as a service capability, right? So going from monolithic to more modular capabilities. So we can take these different services and drop them in place and customize those for different types of employees, for different types of customers, for different types of needs on the go. Again, using the front-end capabilities of instant apps, progressive web apps, micro apps, etc. Right? They flow across all those different capabilities. So we can customize whatever those employee needs are, whatever the mobile needs are, to the back-end capabilities. Right? Instead of having to build that out each time. right? That's what we really have to do today. We typically have to build something specialized out each time, right? And that's very, very time consuming and very, very expensive. And so where we going from, 12 to 24 months to build these things out, we can do these in a matter of days in many cases. So very, very rich and very, very awesome capabilities, right? This also doesn't exclude any of the intelligence that these next generation apps need, right? So whether the apps need to be deployed, where they don't have context, they can't see the back-end capabilities, or they're very limited in what they can see, now we can add in that back-end, that intelligence. Same intelligence that we may see on more richer apps, we could even do that on these basic apps too. We can support connected capabilities on app services, so there's a common framework that integrates these disconnected backends, and we can support them offline, real-time configuration of any type of new events or engagements or anything that comes out, all doing that on the flow, on the go. And so, as you may be familiar with, a lot of this is done through a mobile as a backend system. Is anyone here familiar with MBAS or mobile as a backend system? If you raise your hand. Oh, okay, not too many people. Surprisingly, these things have been out for a long, long time, over 6-7 years. And the idea was that this mobile as a backend system would be a platform that does two things. One would be a very quick and easy development that works across all different types of mobile platforms. So you can develop a mobile front end, typically in a hybrid app capability, right, to support any type of platform, whether it's Android, whether it was BlackBerry, whether it was Apple, right? So easy way to develop. The second part of it was an easy integration, so APIs built right into the application, a mobile backend piece that was integrated into your business services, okay, to be able to support and get the data from your backend onto these mobile devices very easy and very cheaply, right? So like I said, this has been around for a while. As you can see, nobody here has been using them, and we don't see a whole lot of use in them yet because there have been some challenges on the back end. Basically, the front end hasn't been very rich. There was still more development that needed to be done on those front ends in order to make them work. And so again, most people have been kind of focusing on consumer applications and gone straight to that kind of front end development and native application development. But what we see here is with the emergence of the microservices, we can add in a new layer to increase the capabilities, what we're calling this digital orchestration layer, to an existing mobile backend service to start supporting those microservices that I mentioned before. So then a very, very quick way and very low-cost way, whether it's a native app, whether it's a web app, a hybrid app, to support the backend capabilities. So it's going to bring in a lot more intelligence and a lot easier to develop and such. And so obviously this does increase the number of APIs that the organization may need to build out in order to support those different services. But we believe that this will be a much faster and easier way and maybe a more successful way of kind of, getting these applications out into the hands, getting the data out into the hands of the mobile workers. As Nisha said, right, we have all these technologies and capabilities, and the consumer world has really grown dramatically, but the enterprise world has still been very limited in support for a lot of the data. And so for these next generation app services we want to look at, the things to think about in the future are the support for more liquid apps, right? So liquid has become a term that's fairly popular out there, but what we mean with this is much more agile apps, right? So apps that can be changed on the fly, where new data can be brought in, where they can be updated on the fly. So we don't want to think of these apps as just static, right? And every time there's an update, we know that to the OS, we need to change some of those apps. So what's a better way of doing that versus kind of rewriting the whole app or having to patch those apps all the time? So we have to think of new ways to support these type of liquid apps. Connected app services are another huge consideration when it comes down to the app capabilities. So we want to look at the different services, so the backend capabilities, whether they're intelligent app services, Salesforce.com capabilities or ERP, whatever that might be out there. So how can we support these different services and add context to that? So it knows my location, just like we showed on the map with Enterprise 3.0. It knows where we're standing on the map, so it can recommend coffee for us or other things that we might want during our day. Can we do the same thing for the enterprise? So example is on that is one of our clients wanted to be able to build in intelligent services to their Salesforce.com that showed them on the map where their customers are, and then be able to kind of look into those customer base and see what are the recent sales, or even use machine learning to make recommendations of new opportunities to sell within that customer. And so of course most salespeople have a schedule and they have a calendar that they're following during the day, but we also know that meetings get canceled or they may find some more time during the day. So what's the easiest way to kind of find out how to optimize that downtime? Right, so this whole idea of assisted selling is huge. Now by simply looking onto the map, by seeing where the customers are, finding customer information, right, they're able to then make recommendations and then potentially do additional revenue that they hadn't thought of during the day before. So lots of intelligent app services that we see are being built into these apps. Now, of course, with those capabilities, lots of API calls are going to need to be made, right? So they need to have high-performance app services that can scale, right? So we test out for those apps all the time, but that's going to be a huge consideration because there's going to be more and more data coming, whether it's from the cloud, whether it's from on-premise on the enterprise, wherever that may be, lots of API calls that are going to be made during the day. It needs to be digital ready, right? And so that means how can we use analytics in order to improve, whatever the application may be? How can we improve the interface? How can we improve the mobile experience? How can we make sure that security, although is strong, right, doesn't become a barrier to use of these different apps? And so digital ready is a huge piece on that. And then as I mentioned, with the new digital orchestration services, right, how can we make sure that we have the right APIs that are easily built into those apps for today and in the future, in order to improve those services and add services on to make them ready to go in the future. So some key recommendations, and then we can take some questions, right? So we think around these next generation apps, right, they're not just aligning to your digital strategy and the transformation at most organizations, right, but they're going to become a big part, if not the part of their digital transformation strategy. A lot of the data and the traffic, as you see, has already moved off of desktops and moving on to mobile devices. And so this has to fully align and really help drive a lot of that transformation strategy, right? Also put a strategy together to help, modernize your app architectures. And so the best thing that we see on this is that it's no longer siloed between your mobile device, between your portable devices, and then of course between your laptop or your desktop devices that are being used. A lot of these capabilities can go across any of those different platforms. And so it's a write once, work anywhere type of scenario, right, which builds a big integrated approach and helps reduce the time for development and reduce the cost in the future. And so when we're doing this strategy for our clients, we're not looking at mobility as a standalone capability. We're looking at it as part of the solution and how to take data from one area to the next, from one device to the next, and how to just think about the data access and not think about the device or the network. We don't have to worry about that as much anymore, right? And then there's always going to be the support for multiple ecosystems. So there are going to be new ecosystems in the future that maybe we're not thinking about, but we want to make sure that it's something that we can easily apply and move in the future, where today we're building out and customizing and integrating a lot of capabilities because of these monolithic systems that we've had in the past, of course, which weren't digital ready, which weren't designed for mobility, right? But think about in the future, there could be different types of devices. So we showed more and more interest. We showed devices around wearables, for instance. And so we see more and more interest in wearables, for sure. Whether that's something that you wear on your wrist, or nurses, can wear wearables around their neck, or we're working with a cruise line that wants to put wearables and get rid of keys, right, and card keys. And so it becomes more and more a part of what people are using. So there could be different devices, different hardware pieces that people are using, so different types of ecosystems. And that building customized apps doesn't go away. So as we mentioned, there's a small percentage today of off-the-shelf app development. It's only around 30% of apps today are purely just off-the-shelf. So the vast majority, takes some customization. Right? The idea with the templatized apps that Nisha had talked about was that there would be 80% of the work done with 20% customization. It turns out it's a lot more than that needs to be done. So there's always customization that needs to be done. Right? So we're not ever going to get away from that. But you can see there's different ways to customize. And we don't look at everything the same way anymore. So now when we walk into our clients, we can figure out what the requirements are first and then decide, okay, is it a native app? Is it a web-based app? Will it be a hybrid app? Or some of these micro apps and instant apps are also options that we can use. And so we're not just building a one-size-fits-all for our clients. We have different ways depending on the requirements of their speed, what their budget might be, what the application requirements are, their users, the devices that they're using, right? And so we're building a whole different types of different systems for them. And we're doing that intelligently, like I mentioned. Almost everything we're doing today, especially out of our team with digital transformation, includes machine learning, right? Whether it's voice-based capabilities, so moving away from navigating the app through the finger and all through voice. And we think that's something that's going to grow in the future. And we've seen great responsiveness and great capabilities across the devices for using this. So we think something like that is going to become more of the future of these different apps. So we're thinking about navigation, we think about the development, lots of changes that are happening in these applications today, and that will be continuing. We have a mobile point of view, or a point of view in a white paper that goes into a lot more detail on this. And if you want to give me your business card, I'm happy to send you the link to that. And you can get more detailed information both on the front end and the back end development to kind of walk away with this. And then, of course, the slides will be available, and this will be available on YouTube later today. So thank you very much for your attention. We have a few minutes left to take some questions. Nisha will come back up. Any questions out there? If you do, please come up and speak in the microphone because we'll be recording for all this for posterity later.
Yeah, I did just want to add, I mean, hopefully you've seen throughout this presentation that, how we really truly are moving to this next generation of applications. And it's because of all the hardware changes, the software changes on the device side, but also what's happening in the back end and all the new capabilities that are available to us. And Phil and I, we both work on our Google partnership team. And 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, we started working with the Android team. And it was all about how do we do more with Android in the enterprise. And one of the things we really touched upon and talked about was that Google really does have that end-to-end technology stack, and that is their real differentiation that they have. And so whether it's the devices, whether it's Android or the wearables or the glasses or the connected devices, whatever they might be, to the back-end machine learning, the image recognition, of course, the cloud infrastructure and everything that's needed there to support these applications, we really do get a nice, seamless, and really exciting experience. And we've got lots of great examples that we can tell you about further. All right, well, we're here if you guys need us. And thank you very much for joining and for listening. Thank you.
Thanks.